You know, trans kids, this is it right here. That's the coach. Trans kids belong. They had a conversation together. They walked up to each other. They had the talk. And by the way, just so you know, we did not know this. I Googled to see which side Cheryl Reeve is on. She's actually lesbian. Nothing wrong with that. But they're having a conversation here to the left. That's Sophie and her talking. Then the post-game interview, she's being interviewed, the coach, and the question is asked. And here's what the coach had to say of the opposing team. If you can go to what the coach had to say of the opposing team in the post-game.
Because something happened that has pushed the WNBA conversation into completely new territory. What began as growing frustration around player treatment and off-court activism has now turned into a dramatic public controversy surrounding Indiana Fever star Caitlin Clark. For weeks, fans and sports media have been discussing the increasing tension surrounding the Fever, the physical nature of certain games, and the criticism directed toward Clark and her teammates. But according to reports circulating online, the situation may have reached a much more serious stage behind the scenes. And then came the controversy involving protest shirts carrying the message, "Trans kids belong." Reports and social media discussions have alleged that coaches and teams became involved in promoting the shirts, while Phoenix Mercury player Sophie Cunningham became part of the wider debate. But the biggest question was how Clark would respond. If the reports are accurate, Clark's position was far more complicated than simply supporting or opposing a particular message. The situation reportedly raised questions about player autonomy, league culture, and whether athletes should be expected to participate in political or social campaigns. That is where this story takes an unexpected turn. According to the claims circulating online, Clark allegedly confronted the situation directly and made it clear that she was unwilling to remain silent, while a teammate or fellow player became the center of an increasingly heated controversy. But there is an important distinction here. Many of the dramatic details being shared online have not been independently established, including claims of a formal lawsuit, private locker room confrontations, or an ultimatum involving the WNBA commissioner. So rather than treating every viral claim as fact, let's separate the confirmed controversy from the allegations and examine how this story reportedly developed. The tension had already been building around Seattle. The Storm and other teams had been participating in discussions and initiatives involving LGBTQ+ inclusion, while the broader league continued navigating debates about activism, player expression, and the role of social issues in professional sports. For some fans, the shirts represented a message of inclusion and support. For others, the controversy became part of a much larger argument about whether professional athletes should be expected to publicly participate in social campaigns. And that distinction matters, because this wasn't simply a story about a piece of clothing. It became a story about personal choice, team identity, league culture, public pressure, and the increasingly complicated relationship between professional sports and activism. As the debate intensified online, Caitlin Clark's name was pulled further into the conversation. And that is where the story becomes especially important. Not because every viral claim should be believed, but because the controversy reveals just how quickly a disagreement surrounding players can become a national conversation. The question now isn't simply what one player wore or what one team promoted. The bigger issue is where the line should be drawn between league-wide initiatives and an individual athlete's right to decide what causes they personally support. That debate is still unfolding, and the claims surrounding Clark, Cunningham, and the WNBA deserve to be examined carefully rather than accepted simply because they went viral.
More than anything, educate, and there are some things that, we have in common and maybe some things you differ on, just like any issues. And I think it's how you handle things. And so...
You can pause it right there. I want you to now watch what Caitlin Clark's
nice
coach had to say when she was questioned. This is Caitlin Clark's coach. Okay, go for it.
Your stance on men or athletes who test as biological male participating in women's sports. What's your personal
Watch
stance?
your answer.
Yeah, I don't know that I would say that I'm educated enough from a scientific standpoint. I don't ever believe that exclusion is an answer. I just don't.
No, but wait a minute. You got to keep playing it. Is this the only clip we have? Oh, okay.
I think that's it.
Because she says, I used to play with men when I was a kid. I always played with men when I was a kid. And she answers the question like, I'm not a scientist. I'm not this. I'm not that. And then the game's being played yesterday. Sophie Cunningham gets hit in the face by an elbow that pretty much almost like massive foul. They called the foul on her. I don't even know if we can even play this clip or not. If you
According to claims circulating online, the situation reportedly became even more intense after Sophie Cunningham refused to back down under mounting pressure. Instead of fading away, the controversy appeared to grow. Some online reports alleged that Cunningham became the target of increasing hostility, with accusations that opposing coaches and players were treating her differently, because of the controversy surrounding her. Claims even surfaced suggesting repeated confrontations from the sidelines and questionable officiating whenever she entered the game. But those allegations have not been independently verified. Still, the narrative spreading across social media was powerful. Cunningham was supposedly being pushed into isolation, with critics portraying her as someone the league could pressure into silence. And if that was the assumption, there was one major factor they may have overlooked: her connection to Caitlin Clark. The two players had developed a strong relationship, and that made the situation far more emotionally charged for fans watching the controversy unfold. Because when someone close to a superstar becomes the center of an escalating dispute, every reaction suddenly carries much greater weight. Then came the moment that supposedly changed everything. After a fiercely contested game, the Fever reportedly returned to the locker room with emotions running high. Cunningham, who had just endured another physically demanding night on the court, was allegedly visibly frustrated by the attention surrounding her. The atmosphere inside the room was tense. For weeks, Clark had largely avoided becoming the center of the controversy. She continued playing, answered questions publicly when necessary, and appeared determined to keep her attention on basketball. But according to the story being circulated online, seeing Cunningham pushed to her limit allegedly changed that approach. The locker room reportedly became unusually quiet. Then Clark stood up. What happened next has been described online as a dramatic confrontation, although there is no reliable public evidence confirming the exact dialogue or circumstances being claimed. According to the circulating version of events, Clark allegedly walked toward team personnel and confronted the situation with visible anger. The image painted by those reports is striking: a normally composed superstar finally reaching the point where staying silent was no longer an option. But this is where separating fact from viral storytelling becomes essential. There is currently a major difference between what has been publicly documented and what anonymous sources or social media accounts have claimed happened behind closed doors. The alleged confrontation may make for a dramatic story, but without credible confirmation, the exact words spoken, the identities of everyone involved, and the supposed reaction from league officials should not be presented as established fact. What is undeniable, however, is the larger debate that followed. The controversy had moved far beyond a single player, a single shirt, or one difficult game. It had become a conversation about player relationships, league culture, personal expression, and how quickly tensions in professional sports can explode once they reach the public spotlight. And from this point forward, every move by Caitlin Clark, Sophie Cunningham, and the WNBA would be watched much more closely.
The problems that we have in our society, we have to still play this trans kids belong. And listen, I pray for those people. I pray for those people that are confused. My heart goes out to them. I literally pray all the time. Like, let them figure it out. Talk to somebody that's going to do it instead of them patting you on the back and saying, you know what, take your breast off or chop your penis off. And the majority of those people have freaking depression and they wind up killing themselves. Or if not, they wind up shooting up places and they call us transphobic. Give me a freaking break. Shut down the WNBA. Where's the money coming from? Name me a company that loses $40 million a year and people still put up with this. And mind you, Caitlin Collins is your superstar. Caitlin Collins, whatever, potato. That's how much, Adam.
Well, technically, if you can't do potato in the NBA, then
exactly. But Adam, think about this.
And she got you new TV and sponsorship deals, and that money is being used to pay the players, and now you don't need her.
And great point, Tom. Are you ready for this, Adam? They hate her because she's white. She's the nastiest player in the league, and everybody, the coaches, the refs, the players, all hate on her because she's a white star, and she had to bend the knee too. I'm done with the WNBA, bro. I'm tired of it. Is that bad? I'm furious. No, am I wrong?
So where are you at with this?
I'm just, Vinny, I mean this sincerely. Thank you for coming over.
Finally, you got me.
Thank you. Just say hi to me.
FYI, just so you know, that's not happening. The first team in WNBA just got $1 billion valuation. Their revenue's up to $500 million. They're not profitable yet, so it's not like they're making money now. But Vinny, there is no way this thing's going away because the simple fact that we're talking about it right now means it's relevant.
What happened next was reportedly the moment when the entire situation reached another level. According to the story circulating online, Caitlin Clark allegedly lost her composure inside the locker room. One version of the account claims she picked up a clipboard and forcefully threw it down before confronting those she believed had allowed the situation involving Sophie Cunningham to escalate. This was no longer being portrayed as a simple disagreement between players. The allegations describe Clark as furious that Cunningham had supposedly been left to deal with mounting criticism and pressure on her own. Rather than quietly accepting the situation, Clark was allegedly demanding answers. Why had nobody intervened? Why had the tension been allowed to continue? And why, according to the claims, did it appear that Cunningham was carrying the consequences alone? The supposed confrontation reportedly left everyone in the room stunned. But the viral account doesn't end there. It claims Clark turned her attention toward league and team officials and delivered an even stronger warning. Instead of walking away after expressing her frustration, she allegedly made it clear that she would not remain silent if she believed her teammate was being unfairly targeted. The atmosphere inside the room was reportedly described as completely frozen. No one knew what would happen next. Then came the claim that transformed the story from a locker room dispute into something much bigger. Within the following day, rumors began spreading that Clark's representatives and legal advisors had become involved. Suddenly, social media was filled with claims that the situation could develop into a formal legal confrontation. But there is a crucial problem with that version of events. There is no reliable public evidence establishing that Clark actually staged the explosive locker room confrontation described online, nor is there verified evidence confirming that her legal team launched the specific action being claimed. The dramatic details may have generated millions of views, but viral repetition does not turn an allegation into a fact. What can be examined, however, is why the story gained so much attention in the first place. Caitlin Clark has become one of the most closely watched athletes in women's basketball, and any controversy involving her teammates, the Fever, or the WNBA can quickly become a national conversation. And once the possibility of legal action entered the rumor mill, the stakes appeared to become even higher. The question was no longer simply about what happened on the court. It became a question of whether the growing dispute could eventually move beyond basketball and into the legal arena.
Everyone has a hill they're willing to die on. We've talked about this. We all have our hills. The WNBA has basically said, this is the hill we're willing to die on because the L, the G, the B has been grouped in with that T, and they need to basically protect that T. And in the NBA, because I'm the local NBA guru over here, we know. Yeah. You know, they say, you live by you say you live by the 3 and you die by the 3, right? So the women of the NBA are going to die on this hill if it's the last thing they do. And they're not double dribbling. They're doubling down on this nonsense. And at this point, I'm not angry. I'm not upset. I'm sitting there eating my popcorn just being like, you have this generational talent, Caitlin Clark, and you're running her out of the league. And you have this beautiful person, Sophie Cunningham, who's basically saying, listen, I'm just a normal person. I'm not political. I just don't want dudes in the locker room with me. And they elbow her in the face and they go, that's a foul on you. Yeah, shut your mouth.
Oh, God.
So I don't believe they're doubling down, Adam. But here's why. You're right, but I disagree on this angle. There's never been DEI that's been a special program brought into the WNBA. Never has. It was the culture from day one. Their culture was this. Well, this was the culture.
I don't mean this disrespectful. They're all lesbians. A lot of them are lesbians.
The point is, DEI was brought into certain companies and they faked it and they put up programs. We have a DEI program. Mm-hmm. They had DEI DNA. This was it since the beginning. And what you are seeing is a culture clash with Caitlin Clark and Sophie Cunningham and organ rejection. The
controversy reportedly took another dramatic turn as online claims began suggesting that the Seattle coaching staff could face serious consequences over the allegations surrounding Sophie Cunningham. At the same time, the backlash appeared to be growing rapidly across social media. Thousands of fans began debating the situation, with many defending Cunningham and praising Caitlin Clark for allegedly refusing to remain silent. But there was another side to the story. Critics questioned whether the viral accusations had been exaggerated and whether the dramatic claims about league officials, coaches, and legal action were actually supported by credible evidence. Meanwhile, rumors surrounding the WNBA's leadership continued spreading. Some online accounts claimed that league executives were scrambling to control the situation before it developed into an even larger controversy. However, there has been no reliable confirmation that the commissioner's office entered the kind of emergency crisis described in those reports. Still, the story had already become impossible to ignore. Across the United States, basketball fans were taking sides. One group viewed Clark as an unusually loyal teammate who would supposedly be willing to challenge the establishment to protect someone close to her. Others argued that the entire narrative had become a social media spectacle built around allegations that had never been independently verified. And then came the biggest claim of all. Some reports suggested that Clark could potentially use her influence to demand changes within the league or even refuse to participate if certain conditions were not met. But again, there is no confirmed evidence that Clark issued such an ultimatum. What makes the rumors so powerful is the reality of Clark's influence. Since entering the WNBA, she has attracted enormous attention from both longtime basketball fans and a new generation of viewers. Any decision involving her can create headlines far beyond the basketball court. That is why even an unverified claim about Clark taking legal action can spread at extraordinary speed. If a genuine dispute involving a superstar and the league ever reached that level, the consequences could be significant. But for now, the responsible question is not whether the most dramatic version of the story sounds believable. It's whether the evidence actually supports it. And as the debate continues, the line between documented events and viral speculation has become more important than ever.
Bigger story than Nolan Wells, that Caitlin Clark actually got some calls last game. So I'm sure the officials saw that, and they made sure today that she didn't get any calls and she didn't shoot many free throws. That was the thing today. You refs got to stay off Twitter, man. You're so reactive in this league, man. What a league this is, man. But yeah, this was all game. And I get there at home and I get that, if you call that every time, all Minnesota's guards would file out in the first quarter. But still, to never call it is the opposite way. And I'm not talking about just fouls, I'm talking about to never call this. This is a foul, okay? If that's Olivia Miles, that's a foul. Olivia Miles is a rookie. Hasn't paid her dues. Doesn't have to mention Cheryl Swoops.
That's true. If the roles were reversed, we're calling a foul on this. And I think that's everybody's biggest gripe. If this wasn't called by any across the board, fine. But the fact that it's such a double standard, maybe not double standard, the fact that there's such hypocrisy involved, it's like, all right, well, we're going to call fouls here. No, I think double standard is the right word. The fact that we're going to call fouls when it's Caitlin Clark playing defense, but we're not going to call fouls when they're playing defense like this on Caitlin Clark, well, that's the issue. We need it to be fair across the board.
And all the veterans, Cynthia Cooper and Teresa Weatherspoon, every time she opens her mouth, she's not required to do that. And she hasn't even paid her dues yet in the league yet.
And now, the controversy reaches its biggest question. On one side, you have Caitlin Clark, one of the most influential young stars in women's basketball. On the other, you have the league's coaching structure and the larger system surrounding the WNBA. But before we decide who is right, there's something I want to know from you. Do you believe Clark would be justified in standing up for Sophie Cunningham if she genuinely believed Sophie was being treated unfairly? Or do you think the dramatic claims about a lawsuit, locker room confrontation, and pressure on league officials have been taken far beyond what the available evidence actually supports? Tell me your opinion in the comments. I want to hear both sides. And if you believe players should have the freedom to stand up for their teammates without fear of retaliation, hit the like button and share this video with someone who follows the WNBA. Most importantly, don't forget to subscribe, because this story is far from over, and as more verified information becomes available, we'll continue separating the facts from the rumors and breaking down what really happened.